Who is this? And who is this? Why does she have strings coming off of her arms? And are these people okay? The answer to these questions are Miss Fuchi, Tomie, because she's a marionette, and no. But today we're going to go in depth on the lore for the Dead by Daylight Junji Ito collection and why I think it is an almost perfect collaboration, tying in the themes of the source material immaculately with the characters that are a part of it. So if that interests you, get cozy and listen up. Also, hi, my name is freaking Nick, and I talk about all things Dead by Daylight except for the gameplay and the meta, so subscribe if that sounds like your cup of tea. For the 5 of you not in the know, Junji Ito is a world-famous mangaka, meaning a guy who makes manga, and his go-to strategy for the past 4 decades has been, what if this common trope was spooky? And it's done very well for him. You've probably at the very least seen some of his drawings and heard of some of his works like Uzumaki or Tomie. His heavy horror lean and his striking visuals not only make you question who traumatized him as a child, but they lend themselves wonderfully to the world of Dead by Daylight. There are a total of 8 of his characters who were brought into the game, all from his Netflix anthology series called Maniac, which is based on various short stories of his. And we're going to talk about all of them, starting with this tall glass of water. Consistent with the rules of Dead by Daylight's cosmetic sets, Miss Fuchi is a legendary skin for the artist, meaning that she is her own character in Dead by Daylight. She just happens to have the same powers as the artist for some reason. Miss Fuchi is, you guessed it, a supermodel. However, she's not just any supermodel, she's a scary supermodel. Fuchi is incredibly tall and doesn't quite make her way out of the uncanny valley from an appearance perspective. She's polite yet imposing to those who she feels haven't wronged her yet, but she tends to be a vindictive and jealous woman who targets those who either take the spotlight from her or don't appreciate her beauty. She has rows of razor-sharp teeth and is known to feast on her ops. I feel like I'm too old to use the word ops. Ms. Fuchi's origin is unknown, just like many of Junji Ito's creations, and is left up to the reader to try to fill the gaps and answer the questions as to how she became such a successful model, or if she's even human. Her stories can be found in the collection known as Shiver, with her main story being called Fashion Model, where an unwitting film crew hires her to be in their movie, but they end up sidelining her for a younger talent, only to go on to regret that immensely. I think of all the skins in this collaboration, Miss Fuchi's connection with the artist is probably the weakest. She's a pretty blatantly sinister monster, whereas Carmina Mora is a good person fighting for a good cause in Dead by Daylight lore. The similarities are basically their body types and the fact that they both have done a little bit of modeling. Fuchi for her fashion career, and Carmina did a few self-portraits, including a nude one if you go off of her add-on descriptions. In the same book, Shiver, is another story known as The Hanging Blimps. This story begins with a pop singer named Terumi Fujimo, who seemingly takes her own life by hanging, and is later revealed that this was not self-inflicted, but rather she was the first victim of the Hanging Blimps. These blimps are giant floating heads with ropes attached to them that try to snatch up the humans that have the same head as the blimp does. Any attempt to damage or destroy the blimps is futile because the same damage is inflicted on the head of the person that it corresponds to, if that makes sense. The story is much deeper than what I explained, and it touches on themes of toxic fandoms, collective community grief, and the pressures of society. When Terumi's death is still considered to be a suicide, the community speculates on what role her friends, family, and fans had in driving her to make that alleged decision, and the pressures that fame had brought on her. And Dead by Daylight recognizes this story by having Yun-Jin Lee dress up as Terumi Fujino. This makes sense because Yun-Jin's lore deals a lot with the career pressures of being a celebrity, much like Terumi did. Yun-Jin had to constantly work her ass off to keep herself from becoming irrelevant, all while dealing with the pressures of the label and her fans. Yun-Jin also had to deal with her client being a suspected serial killer, which undoubtedly added a lot of stress to the mix. The twins are dressed up as the bizarre Hikizuri siblings. Specifically, Charlotte is Kinako, Victor is probably Hitoshi, and dangling on Charlotte's back is Misako. There are 3 other Hikizuri siblings in the stories: Kazuya is the eldest brother, Shigoro is the middle brother, and Narumi is the middle sister. These orphans have a few stories amongst Junji Ito's library of works that all function as like a darkly comical take on the slice of life trope. The story that's highlighted in Maniac is called The Seance, where the siblings attempt to contact their deceased parents through a ritual and hijinks ensue. Similar to Miss Fuchi and the artist, the links between the twins and the Hikizuri siblings are pretty superficial. They're orphans, and they're maybe a little less easy on the eyes, and that's about it. While the lives of the Hikizuri siblings are more of a dark comedy, Charlotte and Victor basically just went through a tragedy their entire lives. The Trickster dresses up as Soichi Sujini in yet another near-perfect crossover because both of these characters are just little shits. Ji-woon Hawk is known as someone in Dead by Daylight's lore who absolutely needs to be the center of attention, and he does so by being flamboyant and exhibiting his talents whenever he gets the chance. Souichi also likes to be the center of attention, but he does so by telling tall tales and trying to scare people. He seems to think that the attention he gets from his peers by being edgy and weird is admiration rather than the loathing that it is. Souichi also just has a mouthful of nails that he chews on, he pretends that they're his teeth, and he occasionally spits them out at people. The main difference between these two characters, other than the nails thing, is that Souichi has always been a bit of a loner, while Ji-woon has always been admired. But I think everyone watching this video knows a Ji-woon Hawk in their life who is a bit of a dick that craves attention and does so by being talented and good looking, and everyone also knows a Souichi who is a bit of a dick who craves attention through being an absolute creep. Souichi has been one of those staples in Junji Ito's works and has made several appearances throughout his stories, including one in which he dreams of a future in which he is married to Miss Fuchi, so that's a cool crossover, I guess. One of Junji Ito's more overtly chilling works is known as The House of Marionettes, The House of Puppets, or Marionette Mansion, and it's featured in the Shiver collection. This story tells of a poor family that barely makes ends meet as performers who use marionettes. One of the siblings theorizes that it's actually the marionette that controls the puppeteer instead of, the puppeteer controlling the marionette, as would be normal. And as a result, when this brother makes it big, he turns himself and his wife and child into living marionettes, puppeteered by servants who live in the ceiling of his mansion. The story explores the themes of obsession, the relationship between an artist and their art, and the feeling of loss of control. For those reasons, I think Kate Denson is the perfect fit for being the marionette, as her Dead by Daylight lore delves into her struggling to reclaim control of her art because she pivoted to music that she thought would be more commercially appealing to a larger crowd. You see her start to live in the shadow of her own art, and it takes a near-death experience for her to overcome that. Whether or not the characters in the Junji Ito story figure things out with their marionette story, only 3 things are certain with Dead by Daylight. 1. Each patch will come with a host of bugs that you never thought were even possible in video games. 2. Whoever brought the map offering is going to give up on first hook. And 3. Dead by Daylight is going to cook every single time they make a Dredge skin. This one comes from the Junji Ito tale called The Story of the Mysterious Tunnel. As its name would imply, this story revolves around a mysterious tunnel. A train used to run through this tunnel, but too many people would just mysteriously walk into the oncoming trains, so they just discontinued the trains. One of these victims was the mother of our protagonist named Goro. Years later, long after the trains were discontinued, Goro returns there, one thing leads to another, and it's revealed that the spirits of everyone who died in that tunnel still haunt it and affect the people who are drawn to it. What gives this story this underlying sense of dread is that the tunnel is persistent and unrelenting in drawing its victims into the tunnel. The manga has a different ending in which Goro leaves town, and much later, when he is already a grown adult, he's still drawn to come back to it. To me, this story can represent our tendency to return to that which makes us miserable. It also can represent how we never truly and completely move on from those who pass on in our lives. For that reason, and the fact that this conglomerate just looks rad as hell, the Dredge is a perfect stand-in to represent this story. Much like how the story represents death and negativity and the inescapable nature of the truly awful, I mean, that's exactly what the Dredge represents, as this turkey-looking thing is a mishmash of several damned souls who were part of a cult ritual and were all assimilated into being this Drawny. And finally, let's talk about the other legendary killer skin in this collection, along with her counterpart. Tomie replaces the spirit in this Dead by Daylight collection, and Yui Kimura gets the outfit of one of the series protagonists, Tsukiko Izumisawa. Tomie is a kind of succubus, a damn near unkillable monster with a supernatural control over men. Tomie was a girl who liked to sleep around with her classmates and teachers alike. During an altercation with two of her lovers while on a field trip, Tomie is accidentally knocked off a cliff and she dies. Since nobody in the class really liked her, the classmates and teacher all decided to stage it as if it was a grisly murder by chopping her up into 42 pieces and scattering those pieces around. Well, unfortunately for them, it turns out that Tomie can regenerate. And by that, I don't mean she can reassemble herself. I mean each individual piece of Tomie can regenerate itself into a brand new Tomie. So instead of one immortal succubus terrorizing Japan, we now have 42 of them running around. The series serves as an anthology detailing the experiences of several different Tomies across several decades. Across the board, they are all manipulative and self-serving and use their supernatural influence over men to get what they want. Furthermore, any man who lusts after her is driven mad and ends up chopping her to pieces, which in turn makes more Tomies. Tomie seems like a caricature of what insecure, angry men believe all women are like, and the men in the series are meant to be a mirror to those men and show them the tendency of men to resort to violence to solve domestic issues. For that reason, Rin Yamaoka, otherwise known as the Spirit, serves as a great base character for Tomie. In Rin's lore, her father is driven mad by the loss of his job and the pressures of manhood and fatherhood and being a husband, and so he snaps. He grabs his katana and he chops Rin to bits, and she's revived as a vengeful spirit. Both stories serve as a cautionary tale on violence against women. Tomie's look in Dead by Daylight is reflective of her true form, which manifests itself either when she is photographed or when she's under immense amounts of stress, and her body tries to multiply even without her being cut to pieces. Tsukiko Izumisawa is a protagonist of one of the arcs of Tomie. She's a bit of a hustler and she sneaks photos of the hot guys in her class to sell them off to the girls who have crushes on those guys. Tomie catches wind of this and gets Tsukiko in trouble for it just because she can do it, and she's a bit of a dick. Tomie is not a girl's girl. However, Tsukiko discovers that when photographed, Tomie's true form can be seen, and as revenge, she exposes Tomie to the school. There's not too many connections that I can glean between Tsukiko and Yui Kimura, but Yui's story is very much about empowering women. So yeah, hell yeah, go women. So there you have it, the lore for Dead by Daylight's Junji Ito collaboration. Like I said, I think this is about as close to perfect as any cosmetic collection could ever get in Dead by Daylight, both from a thematic perspective and in how freaking awesome it is. I always liked Junji Ito's art superficially, and I'm really glad that this collaboration happened because it motivated me to dive into his works and see for myself what makes him such an icon in the horror community and what makes this fit Dead by Daylight so well. But anyway, like I said at the beginning, my name is freaking Nick. I hope that you enjoyed our time together, and if you did, I will hopefully catch you on the next one.